Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I'm Darren Moser.
I'm Philip Gilfus.
I'm Daniel Prue.
And this is City Alpha 3.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to SETI Alpha 3, a Star Trek podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Prue, and normally, barring the weeks that we have a guest, there are three of us here. But thanks to a fortuitous transporter accident, it's more like SETI Alpha 2.5, I want to say. So, something kind of happened. We're not really sure quite yet, but we are now joined by one entity with two voices. And now, what am I supposed to call you exactly? Are you Phil Wren or Derek?
Well, Derek sounds almost a little too on the nose, but
Phil Wren sounds Star Wars, so let's keep it, because I love Star Wars. It's awesome.
Nice. Okay, all right. I like that.
Well, I don't know. Derek sounds like something in comics, and I really like comics, so let's go with Phil Wren, though. I have to concur with my other personality.
So we're going to be talking about the Voyager episode Tuvix. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because I've never really gotten to engage on an actual serious level before with people about this. Because it seems like every time this episode comes up, generally, unless, and I don't participate in like forum arguments or anything like that, people just tend to avoid some of this stuff that they feel kind of passionately about. And I feel very strongly about this episode. So I'm actually going to let you guys go first.
Then you'll tell us how we're wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Maybe I'm missing something.
But in a loving way.
Why
That's what's different.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give a quick recap. If you don't, I'm sure everybody here knows it, but just in case you haven't, there's a transporter accident, which is something kind of new and fresh in the Star Trek formula. But instead of separating one character into two beings, it takes two beings. Well, actually, it takes three beings, which is kind of silly, and makes them into one being and combines their clothes. Very silly. But anyways, essentially, Tuvok and Neelix get combined in a transporter accident. They live on the ship for a few weeks at least. I guess maybe a month or two, and then I guess it becomes determined that Janeway has to make the decision whether or not to perform a procedure which will separate them into two separate individuals again, or keep them as one. And she makes the decision to separate them. So that's the episode in a nutshell. Go ahead and watch it if you haven't. But I'm going to throw it over to one of you, and I'll let you guys pick. But I want to know what you think overall of the episode, but obviously more specifically, I want to talk about the decision that's made at the end and how you feel about it.
Okay. So for one thing, I enjoy an episode like this because it's Kes-centric, and Kes is a favorite character of mine. Now, I don't think this is her best episode, but I like the fact that she gets a character focus, because sort of the lens of this decision, even though it's ultimately Janeway, and it is Janeway who we must discuss and debate, Kes is sort of the what gets the action going, what really causes the viewers, or at least attempts to have the viewers frame the decision, because obviously she's someone who has a weird relationship with Neelix, we'll call it love, and then has a sort of mentor-mentee relationship with Tuvok. We're gonna do that the whole time, aren't we? And then absolutely. Yeah, and then and so when they're merged, sort of like, who cares? Like, who cares if they're merged? And so Kes is the person who cares, because that's her Neelix who has been merged, because Tuvok's family isn't represented, even though they're discussed. There's no one necessarily fighting for Tuvok, other than, I suppose you could argue, Janeway. And so that's, because if no one's there to fight for the original characters, then, hey, we got this new guy, and we're good now. So I like that. I am a little disheartened that Thomas Riker's name did not come up in this episode. It's like, transporter thing. We've never had anything like this before. I'm like, Thomas. But anyway, and then I just also like anyone yelling out the word sex in the middle of a meeting. That's always good. And of course, and I'm not going to be the first. Well, I am going to be the first one to say it because I'm talking now. But I know you all would agree. Great actor who does Tuvix. I mean, that's a hard thing that you not only have to play one character, like, say like a Seven pretending to be the Doctor, or the Doctor pretending to be, you have to pretend to be two characters put together.
And even that Seven reference you just made, which I just thought of as well, but that's an actress who's been around the other actor for, years versus just coming in for that role.
And then also nailing the part of the flower. I mean, he pulled that off too.
It's in his eyes. You look in his eyes and you see flower.
And that was sort of, I think, the biggest things there. I think this is, I'm going to jokingly say that, but I'm half serious when I say this. It makes you wonder, man, this guy's literally better than Tuvok and Neelix as characters.
They do explicitly state that in the episode. I just want to point that out. Not that should matter.
He has better cooking,
state it.
and he has more tactical. But literally, when you think about it, and I'm not dogging anyone, but I'm not a Neelix hater. But watching this episode, it makes you quite do I really like Tuvok? And if they really replace him, how mad would I really be? They're the greatest. So I think, from an outside perspective, it does make you struggle with that issue of whether they should be brought back or not. But in the interior of the issue, I don't know. I've sort of laid the stage, and I guess maybe I'll wait until Darren lays his stage before we get into the actual Janeway decision. But those are my general thoughts about the episode.
Sure.
So Darren.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I think the makeup design, they do a really good job of merging the two. I mean, he has the high brow and the ears of Neelix, but he's got the complexion and the just the jawline of Tuvok. He's got very dark brown eyes, and I just double checked because I know the shoulder pad is flower patterned, and at first I thought that was a pattern that was on Neelix's, but then I looked back and no, that's the flower is represented in his shoulders, which I'm like, oh, okay, that's a direction to go. I mean, it fits with the Neelix-ness as well. I think it would be a little more interesting if it wasn't a full Starfleet uniform. Well, actually, no, it isn't. It has other cuts and weaves and folds, but
it would be interesting if this was the floral variant of the Star Trek uniform, the Starfleet uniform. But, yeah.
So
Cake Award or something. Sorry.
No, but oh, there you go. And again, like Philip said, really good actor. I mean, he did a really good job of portraying this mix. I was noting before we were recording that, there's scenes where he walks in to talk to Kes and he puts his double hands on his chest, one on top of the other, like Neelix does. And he, every moment and I'm sure part of that's the writing and the directing, to convey that, but it's really well done. Just the creation of this character, and he's in the movie he's in the episode for the bulk of it. It's not like this happens halfway through. He's there almost the entire time. So it's and he's the main character. I mean, that is kind of an interesting thing, because I know in Star Trek they're very much about, these are stories about our characters. They're not about the guest. But in a way, that's kind of not true on this one. I mean, yes, you have, like you said, it's a Kes episode and her dealing with the situation, but I'd say it's almost kind of very close where it's a Kes and Tuvix episode. I mean, he has just as much screen time, if not more, than Kes does. And I think it really comes down to, as we'll get to, it's Kes's battle to lose, because he even goes to her and he's like, he's like, of all the people you want to convince the captain, Kes is not the person you want to talk to, because she wants Neelix back. I don't, we don't have to get into the overlap of similitude and a couple other things that come obviously later in Trek canon, but I like it just because it's a Star Trek episode. At its core, it's this moral dilemma that you would never have outside of science fiction. But it still has threads in just capital punishment to medical decisions. I mean, there's enough threads in the real world that you're like, oh, what would I do if I was presented with this fantastic situation that obviously is never going to happen? So at its core, it is a pure blood Star Trek episode, which I really enjoy.
Well, it's actually mixed blood. But yeah, okay.
Mudblood, as some would call it.
How dare you, Darren?
Oh, man. controversial.
He
This is gonna be very
didn't
controversial.
dare. Anyways, okay. So yeah, all good points. I agree with all. I would, Darren, when you're just talking about, you were just talking about what is kind of a metaphor for, and I also kind of saw, and this might be wrong, but in a way, I kind of saw a really sloppy and clumsy abortion metaphor as well. It doesn't kind of quite hold up, but it's. I think it's just the idea there of.
I think it's
when.
More of the episode of the doctor where he's having the breakdown because he had to choose between two patients.
One of my favorite episodes.
So it's
Yep. Mm-hmm.
so it's more of it's that kind of a choice. It's like, yes, in this situation they are merged into one, but you could easily think of it as they're not merged into one, and your choice is either saving them both or saving none of them, because that's kind of where it's at. And the byproduct and the twist is, but they also exist in this co-being, which you could just leave hanging around. But I mean, Captain Janeway makes a good point. Like, Tuvok is gone, Neelix is gone. Like, he is not Neelix and he is not Tuvok. He is something else.
I do like the also just the similitude reference as well. I think there's a lot of connections there, a lot of echoes in those two stories. I'd have to rewatch Similitude again, but that's definitely a really, really good point.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the heart of the matter is priority of life, which I think maybe you could, if your abortion reference there.
Well, there it sits. Cooking and firing phasers.
Is the priority of the mother, is the priority on the born child? But and I don't think it's necessarily going for that specifically, but you can use that as an analogy. But yeah, the priority of life, you have the priority of new life, a sentient being, Tuvix, or the priority of life of two people. So I mean, if you want to do a maths, you have 2 versus 1, and then you have the priority of priorities. What is the current life? The status quo over the having to do something. Like, in other words, Tuvix is here. You have to do something to that life to get the 2 back, versus the other way around.
Well, I did, and I say again, I did preference it by saying it was a sloppy, clumsy abortion metaphor.
Very sloppy.
I don't think it works. I don't think it works super well on that level. But the reason I brought that up was because it's essentially a choice conversation. Right. That's exactly what the conversation at the end.
Right. We can do nothing versus making a choice.
Well, see, this is where.
But it's who makes the choice.
This is where the debate is going to happen, because no, it's not. We can get into it. I think, in the same way that I would feel on any of these types of topics, is that the person themselves that has to go through whatever it is that they have to go through should be the only agent that has that decision.
Because I think and I'm just devil's or Klingon devil's advocating now.
Fecklars.
Yes, as Fecklar, so is Tuvix able to represent Tuvok and Neelix's wishes?
No,
because,
it doesn't.
I agree with you, Daniel, that. Well, and this is what we're going to talk about. I know. So the individual. Look, the individual Tuvix is who I'm talking about. Tuvix's wishes are paramount. He is part of this. Has to be in a large part of this conversation. But the absent voices is where Janeway represents herself as being the absent voices of Tuvok and Neelix, as far as, can Tuvix represent the people he was, whether he considers them his parents or whatever. And so I guess that's sort of the argument, because there's not equal voices. If it was like, there's some sort of like thing where the Doctor can like project Tuvok and Neelix out of Tuvix's mind, and then you could have a discussion among the three of them, what would happen. But, how do you do that, And again, I'm not.
But they don't exist in that moment. Mm-hmm. So how many people, Philip, does it take before we get Tuvok back? Does it 100, 1,000? You know what I'm saying? It does not matter, because in that moment, Tuvix is what is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can talk. You could literally, maybe there'd be a transporter accident with 1,000 different people, and only one person emerges. Now you can have the conversation.
We call him Voltron.
But in Star Trek, it is, I would argue, and in the Federation specifically, it has never been about numbers. Right. It's been about
new life.
There it
sits.
And it seems to me, this scene at the end of this episode, in a large way, really diminishes the Janeway character for me in a lot of ways. I can see past it. I could ignore it, and that's fine. It's like I like Janeway. I really do. I like Janeway as a captain. It's really hard for me to see a character that I like literally dragging someone kicking and screaming to their death. And I can't think of a scenario, and I may be missing one, and you guys remind me. In all the adversaries that all of these people play, there's always been tragic circumstances where people will be like kind of being willing to give themselves up for the greater good, and they would go along with that. But in this scene, you have literally kicking and screaming off the bridge. She gets down to sickbay. Even the doctor's like, "I'm not doing this, man. Like this is against the oath that I took." I don't know. It's so clear to me that this is so incredibly, and I don't even understand her motivations because they seem entirely selfish. I don't see why this happens. So maybe you guys can clear this up. And tell me, do you guys disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Are you guys in the middle more than I am, or what do you guys think?
I think other than Janeway, I'm going to list some disappointments, and then I'll there we go. The most disappointing scene, I don't mean the story, I mean in like this is real life, or in the world, is the bridge scene. Because look, I don't expect anyone to mutiny Janeway's decision, but it's like, Tuvix has a point where like, dude, is no one gonna speak up? Y'all are okay with it? Because it's even worse. Look, you can do one of three things, right? You can support Janeway, you can be against Janeway, or you can do nothing, which is what they all do. Mm-hmm. That's the worst thing you can do. Is to do nothing and allow things to happen. Like, have an opinion. It's
above my pay grade. Yeah. I mean, there's no money, but it's still above my pay grade.
I mean, I would get, like, maybe if, you had, like, Tom, right? Maybe, he, to be the I don't think he's necessarily... Well, this is early days, right? What is this, third season?
Second season.
Yeah.
Second season.
Yeah, this is still early days. So, like, Tom's going to be the radical, stereotypical. So he could be like, hey, I wish I could, but... something that shows some sort of, like, there's no sympathy in that bridge crew when he's kicking and screaming, like you said, and like that's really disappointing because you saw him getting along with so many people, and so, it wasn't like any of them said like, oh, I really miss Tuvok and Neelix, and I'm sure they do, but that to me that was really disappointing, and also that there's a throwaway line, and it's fine in the 20th, early 21st century, but Daniel, you're my expert on 24th century ideology. I don't think it works in 24th century. In other words, where Janeway says something like, if we had discovered this solution, right after you were made, it'd be a different story. But you've been around for, however. And, like, would it make a difference in the 24th century when new life is created? Like, if 5 seconds later, you could be like, oh, we can get rid of this. Like, should that make a difference?
It should.
We're past our Control-Z moment.
Don't name the lobsters. Don't name the lobsters.
And that's the thing, and that's why why I don't understand her motivations at all. Because first of all, you're absolutely right, Philip.
It's like the writers put themselves in a corner and they couldn't get a better way out.
If that situation happens, then no, you can undo it right away. Even undoing it right away is still destroying a life. And if a life that doesn't want to, unless Tuvix immediately says, "Yeah, go ahead and do it," then okay, that's fine. But even she recognizes that it's wrong, and then she goes back. She's like, "Yeah, I couldn't do it then, or I could have done it then, but I can't do it now." And yet she just goes and does it again anyway. So, like, I don't even understand why she's incriminating herself on that. I don't even understand why she even brought that up.
Well, and it's interesting because it also makes me think of the episode where B'Elanna is split into two halves, and her Klingon and human half, and she's almost like, I like this better because she's always at war with her Klingon half, and she's like, oh, the Klingon half can go do whatever they want, I'll just be human. But then she realizes that, I think, the moral story is like she's the sum of her parts, and that it's without that, she loses that drive, she loses that, part of her personality and culture and things like that. So, it's been a while since I've watched that episode, but I'm pretty sure she's like, she chooses to be rejoined and has to convince the Klingon to go along with it, if I recall.
Well, it's the same thing in the original series episode where you have Kirk transporter accident, and he becomes, drunky, rapey Kirk, and then, not as much Kirk. But even then, at the end, the same thing. We recognize we need both of us to survive.
That's true. That's the big difference, is there's the reconciliation of the party in question. And that's the difference that doesn't happen in Tuvix. Tuvix is like, no.
Yep.
And is it just that everything we've named is something being taken apart and then putting it back together? Because that seems obvious. But if two things are put together, it seems harder to break that apart back into two. I mean,
And because they come together and they're better in some ways than they were apart.
Let's have it. Let's have this discussion. Is Tuvix better than Tuvok and Neelix?
Oh, absolutely. He's absolutely better than.
Yeah.
He's not only is he better, but we are told specifically that he is better. There's a line that Janeway that says, "It seems the better, the sum is better than the." Help me out here. The
sum is better
total
than the parts.
sum is parts. It is totally true here. Whatever. And like he's a better cook. He's a better tactical officer. He's starting to get along with everybody much better. It's like, yes, he is better. It doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant. It actually does not matter. He could be a colossal failure, and it shouldn't make a difference.
So you're just saying new life element is where you are, Daniel. You're like, value
agency.
Unspecific. It doesn't matter.
It's yes, it is agency. It's entirely the fact that this being does not want to be destroyed, and Janeway has the choice, and she can choose to destroy this life in order to restore the status quo. I guess that's what is she doing? I don't even know what her motivation is.
So here's a question, Daniel. You're a writer for Voyager, and you can maybe keep the actor around for like one more episode, make this like a two-parter, and like draw it out. But like you've now written yourself into a corner, and you have to find a way to
Tim Russ and Ethan Phillips have 6-year contracts, Dan.
Yeah. So no,
Easy.
But I mean,
easy peasy.
What would you do to get out of this problem in a better way?
Super easy solution. Well, this is an easy solution for the moral. This may not be a dramatic, exciting response, but there is an easy way that you obviously separate Tuvix in some magical transporter, put him into the plant, whatever you have to do to now have 3 separate entities instead of 2. That's it. Somehow you can beam them out individually.
But I'm saying at this point, it's like a little over halfway through the episode. He said no, and we're not going to force Janeway to.
Oh, I see what you're
That's
saying.
what I'm saying. I'm going to say
Okay.
you need to find a way for him to choose, or like at your end result at the end of 2 episodes has to be Neelix and Tuvok are back. But I'm saying I'm dropping you in at halfway through Tuvix, and we're not going to choose Janeway forces. That's what I'm saying.
But Tuvix's choice was to die. If you gave Tuvix the option to have these 2 beings extracted from him where he does not die, then he would have totally had no problem
he's
with
saying
that,
that for some reason Voyager needed to add a new character, and I don't know where you're coming from in the second season. But.
Look, if you wanted to kill him off the next episode, that's fine. But I'm saying you're creating this impossible scenario.
What if they're trying to do that, and there's a moment during the process where it's apparent that either they're all going to die or Tuvok dies? Like, it becomes more of the situation.
Well, then I would assume, because Tuvix actually says as much, that he would be willing to die for that.
Right.
He would say, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
then do it that way. If that's the way you want to kill Tuvix, then that's fine.
Right.
Then you don't have Janeway becoming a murderer,
Right.
and you don't have everybody else becoming complicit in the murder of a sentient being.
Because there is because I'm not disappointed in the writing. It's because it's in some ways terribly realistic, but like there's a conversation I think when Janeway and Tuvix are talking alone, and then they're still being calm about things, I suppose.
It's getting a little heated, but yeah.
Yeah, but Tuvix is like, look, you want to call me a coward? I'm a coward.
Yeah.
I want to live. And Janeway does that little like, well, part of being a Starfleet is you're sacrificing your life, and Neelix and Tuvok do that. I'm like, well, then guess what? She's kind of doing that, like, just.
And he's
just
like, guess what?
this.
They just sacrificed themselves for me.
Oh my goodness, she's gonna make him feel guilty. She gives him a guilt trip about this, and it's like, first of all, the guy's been alive for a month, and he didn't take the oath that Tuvok did, and Neelix didn't even take an oath either. Mm-hmm. And she goes, in my heart, I know Neelix would do it too. Well, first of all, you don't know that because.
Do you even remember what his voice sounds like, Janeway?
Do you even remember his cooking?
All I'm saying is, I watch this episode and I get angry, and like.
Because it feels like a portrayal of Janeway's character.
It does, and she doesn't come across as like thoughtful and like making a tough decision. She comes across as cruel for whatever. I can't. If anybody can explain her motivations, in this
let me
episode,
posit
I would
this.
love to hear him.
Maybe and I'm not wholly convinced, but I feel like I can make this 60% believable. What if Janeway doesn't necessarily believe in it either, but she just feels like someone has to make the necessary bad guy decision? Like maybe she knows it's wrong, but she sees it as necessary, and not.
But why?
The original lives, and that nobody wants to be the bad guy, but she's the captain, and at the end of the day, she's the one who has to make the press the button that kills the Daleks and the Time Lords. Someone has to do that, and she doesn't want to do it either, maybe, but she has to kind of convince herself. We have to bring the people back, and we should, we have to, we're going to. F it, maybe I'm going to hell, but I'm making the decision.
What would you do in that scenario?
Well, I think, and the only other thing before answering that question is the Kes question. Because you have Kes being the voice in the captain's ear, ultimately fair or not fair, and we can argue that. Janeway makes it her decision, right? Kes, what do you want?
So she basically becomes the next of kin power of attorney.
Yeah.
For someone it's basically like Neelix is no longer able to medically make his own decisions, is the way they're treating it.
Okay, but of course, we're okay.
Well, like in other words, how do you, and we don't have to be, like, I'm not making you, like, whatever you say, that's all we're going to do. But, like, how do you view Neelix and Tuvok? Are they dead? Because they can be brought back.
Okay. Well, lots of things happen in Star Trek. I mean, I guess it depends on how you define death. I mean, there's a lot of variables there and stuff. It's what the only thing to me that matters is you have a thinking, sentient agent in front of you that has a mind of its own and can make its own decisions. That's it. To me, that's the ball game. That's the end of the discussion. It doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, it could have been 1,000 people that got combined into this one person. Mm-hmm. It is now this person, and this person makes this person's. In the same way that nobody could make Janeway give up her life for her crew. Not that she wouldn't. Of course she would.
I know, workforce. She kind of, I'm just kidding.
That's the thing. It's you don't force somebody else to give up themselves for someone else. It always should be their choice. And it seems. And especially when you can't even, I mean, we've been talking for a while now. Neither of you can actually give me a concrete reason why this was necessary. Maybe I'm not putting you guys on the hot seat.
Well, no. I mean, whether I believe it or not, I mean, the way I would defend it is that, I mean, you can bring two people back. And I mean, it's not a numbers game. It's that they're the actual people, Tuvok and Neelix. It doesn't matter if it was one, if Tuvok and the flower beamed up and you had two flower, if you could,
it's just like, kill me now, it hurts.
All right, okay, but here's the bottom line, Philip. You're running a Star Trek RPG for us right now, and you put us in this scenario.
I can't
put yourself in this scenario. What do you do? What is your decision? Given all the context of the episode that you're aware of,
right.
Everything that you know, are you gonna yank this guy off the bridge, go against the doctor's orders, do it yourself, and
by the way,
these two people
I have to
out
say,
of this person?
The doctor did not protest that much. By the way, he could have gone farther. Deleted the medical files, like gotten rid of the medicine. Whatever. He could have tried harder.
Throws the medicine out the window.
He developed the technology, and I guess maybe he assumed that Tuvix would have been okay with it. I did like, though, that they put that scene in there. I think that was super important.
Yeah.
It was good for the Doctor's character.
Well, that's true. Maybe the Doctor is the only one I cannot be disappointed. He's the only crew member who's like, no.
Yeah, he says no, absolutely not. Although he does just sit there and watch. But yeah, anyways, Phil, feet to the fire, man. You gotta pick.
Yeah.
This is your command decision. It's A or B. That's all you get.
I'll let Philip decide.
I'm going to eat this apple, and there's actually a C option. Tuvix just explodes by himself. I think it's when you look at the other lives, these rich lives of Neelix and Tuvok, and you can bring them back. It's hard to not to, even though again, it to me, and it shouldn't, but to me the quality of Tuvix does matter. The fact that he is better, maybe that's utilitarian, but when we go home to the Alpha Quadrant, which is what this is all about, and what do I say to Tuvok's wife? That I could have brought him back, but I chose not to because I liked his cooking better. It's the whole I don't. I mean, I don't want to make this kind of analogy, but I'll go ahead and make it. But it's sort of like the whole: do you drop the nuclear bomb? If you could kill this many to save this many, and it's one of those big decisions. So I think the way she went about it was terrible. I think and maybe because it's a 1 hour episode or a 40-minute episode, I agree with you. She comes across as cruel, and I don't know without doing a two-parter. Because, I mean, it's a lot of heavy stuff. That's a lot to put in that episode. It almost deserves a two-parter of maybe having, the introduction, and then the second episode is we're going to kill him. Sort of have your Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3. I don't think it's quick and easy, and I get what you're saying, Daniel. I would lean towards how Janeway did it. I would have stretched a lot more discussion, a lot more back and forth, because you just can't say, Tuvix, you're going to die tomorrow. Let's not put the gun to his head. How about let's think about it, because it ain't no one going anywhere. I don't know, it was the DNA deteriorating. I think we still...
Nope.
That's true. I was trying to remember. I was trying to remember, was there something about the planet they were near?
Right in the middle of his work shift, by the way, people. Yeah. He pulled him away in the middle of his work shift to kill him, just so you're aware. Yeah. That's all.
So I will say I lean towards Janeway's position. That's my not my final answer, but my answer for now.
All right, Darren, it's up to you. By the way, I am never, ever, just so we clear this up, never going on an away mission for Philip. Ever. There's no chance I'm risking that. So
we're all going to beam down one at a time just to be safe.
But then what if you will end up vanishing slowly? I just watched the Enterprise episode. So.
Yeah, I think, you make a really good point, Philip, with the, what do you say to Tuvok's wife and family, when they get back. But I think if they... Again, it's all fictional, and the writers could do whatever they want. So I think if they had added something his cells are going to degrade, or they're going to merge in a way that we can't undo it, there's some sort of time choice that's forced, I can see that a little more. But otherwise, it's almost we'll just leave him as one until you get home, and then decide again. If you have the technology to split them apart, there's literally kind of no reason to do it at that moment, especially against the living entity's will. So I feel it's just the writers kind of put themselves in a bad situation and didn't tweak the conditions enough to make it tenable. But... Yeah, so I would go with not killing Tuvix. I would keep him around, and shame on those writers for getting rid of 2 actors, because why did they do that? They're going on sabbatical.
Now, here's the thing, though. I mean, this is a great episode of Star Trek for everything that we just talked about. It presents us with questions that maybe in a way that we would never really realistically ever be presented with them, but makes us think and makes us consider other sides and kind of what was going on. Now, I think Janeway was an absolute monster in this episode, but that's just me, and I could be wrong. And I think it is a really strong episode of Star Trek because of that. Again, the ending, I would have totally done the other way with it. But
one of the things about the way they sometimes do Janeway's heavy decisions I don't like. And
I just found a wanted poster that says "Wanted for the murder of Tuvix, Captain Katherine Janeway, reward in gold." I'm like, wow. Okay, so sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
Well, no, I was just going to say, the big decisions that Janeway makes in the course of Voyager, literally and figuratively, do not show her best side. And I don't know whether to take that as bad writing or that's just who the Janeway character is, which I really don't want to admit, but maybe that's true, because whether it's Scorpion or whether it's Equinox, she does not come across well either time. Equinox just goes crazy and kill them all basically, and that's not good. And she fires Chakotay. Does the same thing in Scorpion, as I recall, when she's bargaining with the Borg, which again is not necessarily a bad decision, but the way she does it, basically firing Chakotay, we're not going to talk about it. I thought we were together, and I guess we're not. Get out of my face, And she just doesn't, it's either Janeway or the Highway. I that's one thing I guess I don't like about the character, is that when it comes to the heavy decisions, she's a go it alone, which. Is that a criticism? Maybe all the captains are like that, and I'm just picking on her for no apparent reason. But I guess there's usually a little bit more input instead of just maybe the other ones are a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe they're all like that, and I'm just picking on Jane.
Well, she does it. She does it specifically in this episode too. She calls Tuvix in with Chakotay. Like they're all in the conference
But then makes
room.
Chakotay leave.
And then makes him leave immediately. She's like, okay, scram.
I was like,
I'm
shouldn't he be in there? Have a little first officer command, but maybe, gain.
Well, that's the thing. Because right before Tuvix comes in, they're having a conversation, and it kind of feels like Chakotay isn't super on board with the idea, and then she dismisses him and he goes away. And here's the thing. I was kind of also doing the same thing where I was thinking of how would Kirk, how would Picard or Sisko or even Archer handle this? And that's a really complicated question, and that depends on the writing and blah, 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 blah. But I came down to the fact that, well, they would sit down and have a conversation with the person, which Janeway does here. But as soon as Tuvix expresses his discontent, his unhappiness with the idea of just being kind of killed, she gets super hostile at him right away, like super hostile, and is like, blah 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 blah, and then just, if I could have changed it in the moment, I would have, and now I can't. But whatever, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a writer. I don't know how everybody else would have handled the situation differently. I just know that we don't have a scene like this with anybody, with any other, as far as I can remember. Now I may be forgetting one. But we don't have a scene like this with any of the other captains and somebody under their command. It just feels weird and wrong to me.
I think at our core we're saying this episode could have been told in a Star Trek way and still with the same dilemma, but done in a way where, Janeway doesn't come across as negative or cruel or anything like that. It just doesn't. And so she does come across as just...
Like, do you think that's the point of the episode? Like, in other words, I feel like this would have been 30 minutes longer to do justice. Because, again, I don't think it would have been a boring episode to make it longer if you could in the real world. I know you can't. But, like, if this was like an hour 15, you could have kind of done it a little more justice with sort of like the creation of the character, the introduction and life of the character, and then in Act 3, which is going to go 15 minutes longer, the destruction of the character. Because I think without that longer third act that I'm making up in my construction here, it just seems like she's just like, yeah, Kes, I'm being glib. Kes cried. It made my heart melt. Whatever, let's kill him. And so it kind of is. That's the quick version.
Yeah, if they stretched it out to a 2-episode arc or whatever, yeah, totally. And like that would because that would give you more time to get to know the Tuvix character and maybe make the tragic circumstances, whatever they fix them to be, more heartbreaking. Like, okay, we do have this character has to sacrifice himself. Maybe that's the lesson he has to learn, or
because we're told that he's like, becoming a part of the crew, and people, but it's easier to show that over a longer runtime.
And then, please. Oh God! Please don't have the captain dragging somebody who does not want to be killed off the bridge of your ship.
Yeah,
because it does not. Optics are not great on that scene, and it's really tough for me to get past. It's ugly. It's ugly, and it just doesn't feel like something a Star Trek captain would do. Get off my bridge. Like, that's something you do. Security comes, takes them, and they put them in the brig. It's not that you go directly to their execution chamber.
I got the out. We keep him, and then later when we meet Q, we say, could you just make this into 3 people? Just,
there you go.
And boom, problem solved. And then Tuvok is like sick and tired of Janeway at that point, and he goes on his merry way.
There you go.
Pull the Q card.
All right, well, I've said enough. I've said my piece. People now know how I feel. I'm going to give you guys even though we didn't all agree, but anything else you guys want to talk about, speak about?
I don't know if I have the finger on the pulse of fandom, but I feel like this is an episode that, we don't talk about it because we're going to be here all day. But, like you said, I think it's healthy to talk about, as long as you're not going to be internet commenter weirdos about it, because there are so many heavy issues, and that's, everyone just wants to like make fun of Threshold and call it a day, I guess. But I think with something like Tuvix, it is very Star Trekian. Now, whether you think, and I don't disagree, I think we all agree that whether you think the ending's a little ham-fisted, but at least the issues presented is something worthy to talk about. So I think it's something that is fun, quote unquote, to talk about and discuss among fans.
Yeah, I think, we've said it several times before, Tuvix is great Star Trek. It may not have been, and maybe in some way it's even better that it it portrays a character we love in a negative light that we don't like, because that's kind of what's sparking this conversation. I mean, we've kind of talked around the fact that it could have been written better and not have, gone against the character as much. I'm speaking of Janeway in this regard. Like, people don't like it when characters they enjoy act against type. That doesn't jive well. But again, but Tuvix is a great episode. It's definitely a thought-provoking episode. I mean, there's few episodes I can think of Star Trek in general where you would have such a spirited discussion, and has had many spirited discussions on many podcasts and many forums. So it's
yeah, and that's perfect, because I would love to kind of keep going with this kind of line of conversation. I'd really like to have a conversation about, like, In the Pale Moonlight, because while I think that episode is very much in line with Sisko, it's also very controversial what he chooses to do in that episode. And I think there's a very large case to be made that he does a terrible, terrible, terrible thing.
I mean, does he even ask the Romulan senator if he wants to die? I don't think so.
It's a fake.
I was also thinking of Iborg, where although Picard ultimately does, I think, make the right moral decision, it's a very interesting moral dilemma. We could easily pick out interesting kind of moral quandaries that our captains find themselves in. And hey, to be fair, there are some that Janeway faces that I think she totally comes out on the right side on. It's just this one really sticks out to me. And I'd love to kind of keep going with these kinds of... You kind of usually find yourself on one side or the other, and maybe we don't all agree, and we can just kind of talk about it. Now, here's the thing. Philip, if people wanted to talk to you about how much of a monster you are, that you would literally drag Tuvix kicking and screaming off the... no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Please don't.
I mean, no, you hype us right on the bridge. Duh. Come on, people.
Just space them right from the bridge. Just shove them up the airlock.
But they can tell me about what it's like to really wear the big pants. And on Twitter, where my handle is NC Public Servant.
And Darren, if people wanted to see what you and K2SO would look like as a fused being,
Oh, wow.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see
They
that.
actually are, aren't they?
they kind of are, yeah, right? Yeah.
It's more like a conjoined twin kind of thing, where my stomach to his back. But they can find me on Twitter under username Dr. Sci-Fi, DRSCIFI, or visit my website drsci-fi.com, where I have images about blogs and podcasts and cosplay and all sorts of great Star Trek and science fiction things. What about you, Daniel?
They can find me on Twitter at OneUpDan. That is the number one, not the word. And we can talk about all things Star Trek. Okay, Philip, what are we talking about next week?
Well, what we're going to be talking about next week is, we talked about Vulcan and other alien mixes. So I was thinking about aliens on Earth. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, you mean First Contact? No. I want to talk about all the alien visits on Earth before First Contact, because according to Star Trek, there have been many alien visits on Earth prior to what we think of as First Contact.
That's fun. That sounds cool. All right, everyone. I'm Daniel Prue.
I'm Philip Gilfus.
And I'm Darren Moser.
Stranded here on SETI Alpha 2.5.
Thanks to Janeway.
Come!